Thank you and good morning. Good morning. I'm honored to be your closing speaker for this year's 2008 Million Dollar Roundtable Conference, and I'm honored to be here. I was introduced by Jim as a former National Football League football player. How many of you here think I look like a professional football player? I'm just curious. Raise your hands. Not many. I am 6'2" and skinny. I was sitting just a short time ago on a flight going into Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, sitting next to a woman on my right. She engaged me in a conversation. She began to ask what I did for my career, and I told her about my corporate work. She probed a bit further and asked, "Have you done this your whole career?" To which I said, "No. As a matter of fact, before that, I was a football player." And she said, "Oh, really? High school?" And I said, "Yes, I played in high school, I played in college, and I played in the NFL." And right away she said, "Well, you must have been a kicker." Never call me a kicker. I've been knocked out 3 times. I've dislocated my jaw 3 times. I've separated my shoulder. I've broken my ribs, my thumb, my nose, my wrist, and my ankle. But it was fun. I had a great time. Now, a great coach said to me one time, he said, "Tom, the minute you stop learning, you start losing." He went on to say, "I don't care how much money you amass. I don't care how many degrees you place upon your wall. The minute you stop learning, you begin to lose, and that is a fact of life, ladies and gentlemen." I've stood outside these doors the last 4 days watching people come in. I've interacted with many of you. And every time we have an interaction, a transaction takes place. Whether you're selling something to a family or to a client or a prospect, a transaction takes place. The reality is we're either getting better or we're getting worse. We're moving forward or we're falling behind. If we think that the ship has arrived, trust me, it's already sailed. If we're not getting better, we're losing ground. What we need to do is continually learn and grow, and that's the beauty of this conference. That's what makes things happen and move for us in life. I've got on my belt here, ladies and gentlemen, you do probably as well in your person, I have my phone. It's turned off, obviously. It's a Motorola phone. Back in 1994, 24 million of these phones were sold. In 1999, 300 million phones were sold. The leader at that time was Motorola. And the reason they led was simply because they were first to market. They collaborated, they innovated, they managed change beautifully, they took care of their customers well. But in 1996 and 1997, it was moving from analog to digital. And a little company in Northern Europe, perched high towards the Arctic, came out of nowhere and became the new cell phone leader because it got to digital first. And that company is called Nokia. And what Nokia did just 10 years earlier before that is they sold rubber boots and snow tires. You and I need to know where our competition's coming from. Why? It's because we live in a world right now where it's moving rapidly. If we're not getting better faster than the competition's getting better, we're falling behind. This last week I went to Orlando. Next week I'm in Chicago. The week after that I'm in Los Angeles. I'm speaking to companies all over the world to try and find an edge. They're looking for some way to take market share. And so if we're not learning, we're falling behind. Learners inherit the world, while the learned are beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Ladies and gentlemen, back in 1981, I was drafted into the National Football League. It was a dream come true for a little kid. Since the age of 7, I had this dream to be a football player. And I'm not that big, you can tell. I was drafted, and being a backup quarterback in the National Football League is a great job. I kid you not, it is the best job in the world. And the reason why, you have this unobstructed view of the field in front of you. No one's in your way. Right behind me is a table that has all the Gatorade you'd ever want to drink in your life. I'm quite content. If they sold popcorn, I'd buy it and eat it. It was just a great experience. We're losing 17-0 against the great Pittsburgh Steelers. My coach comes down the sidelines. He says, "Tom, get your helmet. You're going in." And I said, "Coach, great." And I hustled over to the bench, and I grabbed my helmet where I kept it. I strapped it on. I marched out onto the field, called the play, stood now at the line of scrimmage. 2 minutes earlier, I was over there with the clipboard. And I got behind the center, ladies and gentlemen. Since I've been a little kid, I've just been mesmerized by sports. And I got behind the center, and I saw all these people, 74,000 strong, in Pittsburgh's Three River Stadium. And a little voice started to click in my head. I started to say to myself, "Tom, it's time to go to work." And so what I've been taught to do since I've been a little kid playing the position of quarterback is you scan the defense from left to right to see if you need to audibilize or change the play. It's really quite simple to do, ladies and gentlemen. You get behind the center, and what you do is you see the cornerback, you see the outside linebacker, you see the free safety, and you make a visual movement to see if you need to audibilize or change the play. I'm behind the center, I see the corner, outside linebacker, and all of a sudden I see a man standing 4 yards in front of me. And he's a big man. He's the middle linebacker of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you don't know who it is, he's the great steel curtain defense middle linebacker. His name is Jack Lambert. If you don't know who Jack Lambert is, he stood about 6'3", 225 pounds. 7-time Pro Bowl selection, 4 Super Bowl rings to his credit, voted in the Hall of Fame 5 years ago. The guy's the best in the business. 4 yards away from Jack Lambert stood me, Tom Flick. 6'3" at that time, 200 pounds, 21 years of age, a bit nervous, and I get behind the center, and the first thing I notice about Jack is the simple fact that the guy's got no teeth in his head. I kid you not, he's got no teeth in his head. And so the first thing that goes through my mind, it's not the play, it's not the clock, it's not any of those things of execution. I'm behind the center thinking one thing and one thing only. I'm going to build a relationship with Jack. That's what I'm thinking. Great business environments have great relationships, would you agree? And so what I do is I try and nod to get his attention. But he pays no attention to me. He moves a big nose tackle into the gap. He looks up and sees me instead of Joe Theismann, our starting quarterback. And what he does next catches me and my team off guard. Looking directly at me, he points his finger before the ball is snapped into my hands, and he yells at the top of his lungs so loud that my entire team hears it. He says, "Hey, who are you?" And that wasn't the worst part. Seconds later, my entire offensive line turned around to see who I was. I had a problem. I have completely forgotten the play. My clock's down to about 3 seconds, and thank goodness I had a veteran center who snapped the ball up into my hands. And I initiated the play, and I think I handed off to somebody, and we went down the field and we scored, and then we scored a second time, and we should have scored a third. And ladies and gentlemen, we lost the game. Whenever you lose something of value to you, maybe you've played sports before and experienced it. We showered up, we got on a bus, we headed to a runway tarmac. There was our charter jet waiting for us. I got off the bus, I entered the plane, I sat next to a window seat. My teammates filed past me. The door was shut, we taxied, we took off, we're flying back to Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, I could not get the vision of Jack out of my head. And the words that he said to me in the course of the game, "Who are you?" as he pointed his finger at me, rattled in my brain for some 30 minutes until finally, thank goodness they did, they traveled 18 inches down here into my heart. And as a young 23-year-old man, I began to ask myself that question. I said, "Tom, who am I and where am I going and where am I going to end up and what's life really all about?" Ladies and gentlemen, I've come a long distance to ask you the same 4 questions. Who are you and where are you going and where are you going to end up and what's life really all about? And the reason that I ask you the questions is because the people that you're leading, your clients, your customers, the children that still reside in your home are asking you those same questions. They're essentially saying to you, where are we going and what does the future look like and how are we going to get there and who's going to lead us? And you need to have an answer. What if I spun it this way to you? What if I put it in business vernacular and said, ladies and gentlemen, do you have answers to these? What motivates you? How do you focus your energy? How do you get your clients and your people that you know and your teammates to focus their energy? What's your picture of your future? And here's the kicker of all questions. You answer this and you can walk out of here supremely successful. Here it is. Ready? What is it that you do? I'm a financial advisor. I didn't ask that. I'm a barista at Starbucks. That's not what I'm at. Listen, I'm a manager at Ritz-Carlton. Let's see if I can make sense of my own question. In my pocket, I possess a key card to the hotel right next door at Intercontinental. 5 years ago, my company had a lot of business in Southern California, so what I did is I purchased a season pass to Disneyland for my family. It's a wonderful place to be, would you agree? And my wife, Molly, was leading our troop, and when you have a season pass, you get a key card much like this with a photo on it and some information. Molly was walking up to a young woman in her mid-20s at the park, and she handed her card to her. This young lady popped the card into the machine, turned around with a large smile upon her face, turned back to my wife and said, "Molly, happy birthday," and she gave the card back to my wife. Molly received her card with a smile and said, thank you very much, but it's not my birthday. And she responded and said, I know. It's this coming Saturday. But I didn't expect that you and your family were going to spend the entire week with us. And besides, Molly, I wanted to be the first to wish you a happy birthday. You, Tom, Joe, and Jenny called us by our names. Come on inside and have a great time. Why? They're just not theme parks that make a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. Although they're theme parks that make a lot of money, they're in the happiness business. That's what they do. That's who they are. And a young woman in her mid-20s who understood that so well allowed us to walk our first steps onto that property with broad smiles and great expectations for the day to come. And yet recently I was flying some 4 years back, and whenever I fly, I ask questions. I was flying from Atlanta to Seattle, and a gentleman was sitting in the window seat, and I was sitting on an aisle seat, and there was an empty one between us, and I asked him a question. His name was Robert. He said, Tom, you can call me Bob. I said, Bob, can you tell me what you do? Do you mind? And he said, yeah, sure. And he put some reading material in the pouch in front of him, and he slumped back in his seat, and he shrugged his shoulders, and he released a large sigh, and he said to me, Tom, I sell insurance, property and casualty. I attest to you, ladies and gentlemen, he didn't know what he did. You see, Bob saw himself as a paper pusher. He's a guy that filled out a bunch of policies. And what he failed to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that he was a man who allowed mothers and fathers to take their children and tuck them in bed at nighttime and pull a sheet right up under their chins and kiss them on the forehead or on the cheek and say the words to them, I love you, sleep well tonight, because there was a roof over their head. No, you see, ladies and gentlemen, Bob puts families back together, and there is a vast difference. Do you see where I'm going? And so that's why I ask you the question, what is it that you do? What is it that you do? In my pocket, I possess and I carry with me every day, and you, my friends, know this of me. You would never know this, but I've got 2 quarters in my pocket. And the reason that I carry 2 quarters, it's to honor my father, Lyle Flick. I love my dad. I buried my dad 7 years ago on Father's Day. My father, retired naval aviator commander. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am in my household growing up. I buried my mother 19 years ago of pancreatic cancer 2 weeks after our first child was born. My dad, Lyle Flick, lived with us the last 7 years of his life with Parkinson's disease. And so what I did is I would shower my father and wash my father and dry my father almost every day. And the kids, our children, when they were young, would leave the table and run over to their grandfather and tie his shoes and button his shirt. And so to honor him, I carry 2 quarters in my pocket. And the reason why I do is that my brothers and sisters, 4 boys and 3 girls, when we were young, my dad required all the young men in the household to have 2 quarters on their possession at all times, whether going to school in the morning, going out for the weekend, going to a game. Tom, you got your quarters? Yeah, Dad, I got my quarters. Joe, you got your quarters? Yeah, Dad, I've got them. John, James, Dad, we've got our quarters, Dad. And the reason we had 2 quarters in our possession, ladies and gentlemen, is because in case we met a cute girl, we're supposed to buy him a Coke. That's my father. The greatest generation to ever walk the face of this earth. Many of your mothers and fathers fall into that same category. You can give them an applause, certainly. The post-World War I, the pre-crash, they're the greatest generation, and we're losing thousands of them every single day. Well, as my father aged with Parkinson's, he fell. And he broke a hip, and he was placed in a hospital and then moved to hospice. And I was sitting with my dad one day, and I said, Dad, how are you doing? He said, Son, where's my wallet? I said, Dad, it's over here in the drawer. He said, get out a couple bucks. I said, yes, sir, I will. And I grabbed his wallet and took a couple dollars out. He said, put them in my hand. And he clenches his tremoring fist around $2 bills. He must have known when the nurse's rounds were taking place, because the nurse walked in just moments later, and he holds up his tremoring hand to her, and she walks over with a broad smile and says, Lyle, we can't take your money, and pushes his hand back down to his chest, and he pushes it right back up to her and says, no, 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 no. In case you meet a cute doctor, you need to buy him a Coke. That was my father. And I watched a man on a morphine drip trying to have his pain regulated, but he never complained one time because it's not in him to do that. And I watched my father die with dignity and great honor and grace, and I sat there ashamed after a while. Why? Every time a nurse or a doctor or an orderly walked into the room, he turned his full attention to them. And he would say to them in the midst of his pain, he'd say, "How's your day today? Are you having a good day today? What's going on in your world? Sit down and talk to me for a while." And he gave them a 10. And I sat there, ladies and gentlemen, ashamed to say that I was giving people 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s. And my mind would say very stupid things like, you know what, today it's Monday, and Wednesday it's hump day. And I would rationalize almost anything, but I don't do that anymore. And the reason that I don't is because the past is gone, and the future's not promised to any of us. And I watched my father live a life and die with grace and dignity that I realized that I'll never do that again. So every single day I awake, I give people 10s. When you walk out of this building today, give people 10s. Give them your best. Give the best to your clients. Bring all of you to work every single day. Life is too short. I've got you right at this moment, and you've got me. And so when you talk to your clients and speak to your clients, the way that you move them forward is by being authentically caring towards them, by being real, by being transparent. People purchase product. You don't win people on product and price. If you do, you don't keep them. You do it on what I call moments of truth. That's called self-leadership. Let me ask you some questions, please. A lot of people think that leadership is title, prestige, it's a corner office, it's a healthy bank account. And I don't think it's any of these things, and so I'm going to give you a quick quiz. See if you can answer these in your mind and see how you do. Ready for this? Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, name the 10 wealthiest men in the world. Name the last 10 Heisman Trophy winners. The last 10 Miss America winners. The last 10 Nobel or Pulitzer Prize winners. The last decade's worth of World Series winners and the MVPs associated with their teams. How did you do? I did very poorly. And yet I didn't tell you second-class achievements. Those are first-rate accomplishments, and yet we can't remember them. Try the second part of the quiz. Think of 3 people you enjoy spending time with. Name 10 people who've taught you something worthwhile. Name 5 friends who've helped you in a difficult time. List a few teachers who've aided your journey through school. Name a half a dozen heroes whose stories have inspired you. How did you do? I did a lot better. Why? Because leadership's not about credentials, and it will never be about credentials. No matter how many awards you win, leadership will always be about concern. And the minute we stop being concerned for the people that we've been entrusted to lead, ladies and gentlemen, we have failed to lead people. It's all about concern. And I watched my father lead people, and yet he was the one that was dying. And how do we lead people? It will surprise you. It's in the power of our words. It's in the power of our words, because words and numbers create pictures. If I was to say to you right now, ladies and gentlemen, the Eiffel Tower, instantaneously there's a vision that comes in your mind, the picture of the Eiffel Tower. What if I was to say to you the Grand Canyon? Instantly, the vastness of the rim, the colors at nighttime, the sunset of gold and purple, the depth of the canyon. What if I said the number 1? Right away you think of something. You think of best and first. How about the number 13? It's unlucky. I don't want to go there. Most hotels don't carry a 13th floor. How about 9/11? Do you see that picture in your mind? How about 1 million? What are you thinking when I say 1 million? I'll bet you $1 you're not thinking about 1 million chickens. There's no way you're thinking 1 million chickens. You're thinking about who wants to be a millionaire, $1 million. That's what you think of when you hear of a million. Catch this. Words create pictures. Every time you speak to your clients and potential clients, a picture is arised in their mind. Pictures create emotions. Your birthday, your anniversary, your wedding, a large client that you just reeled in. Words create pictures, pictures create emotions, emotions create attitudes. An attitude is simply the way in which we lean. We lean towards something positive or go, we lean towards something negative or stop. Attitudes permit behaviors. Behaviors create habits, and habits create reality, and reality creates you. Ladies and gentlemen, this room right here today is filled with people with deeply ingrained habits. If you're writing something down, you may wish to write this. Here it is. Successful people have simply formed the habit of doing things unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. Tom, it's got to be more than that. No, that's it. That's all that it is. They simply form the habit of doing things unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. It's the power of your words. It's how you communicate. How many people here know of Ken Blanchard, have heard of Ken Blanchard before? He wrote The 1 Minute Manager. I think he writes a book a week. He's very prolific in writing. 7 years ago, I was contacted by a CEO out of Dallas, Texas. He said, Tom, I would like you and Ken Blanchard to come and put our messaging together for our leaders for a 3-day weekend in San Diego. And I said, Tim, I would be honored to do that. And Ken shared a story about a Palm Beach Ritz-Carlton hotel, a company that knows exactly who they are and what they do. He asked for a simple 7 a.m. wake-up call, but ladies and gentlemen, this is what he receives. The phone rings at 7 a.m. sharp. He picks up the phone, and in the receiver, he hears a woman's voice who says this, Good morning, Mr. Blanchard. This is Rita. It's a beautiful, balmy 76 degrees here in Palm Beach. Our high is going to be 87. It is a glorious day. Mr. Blanchard, I've also checked your itinerary. I see that you're leaving us and heading off to New York City today. But Mr. Blanchard, I want you to know something. I've also checked the weather in New York City. The high is only going to be 41 degrees. Mr. Blanchard, would you consider staying a couple of extra days with us, sir? That's a wake-up call. And he yells back into the receiver. He says, Who is this? And she says, Well, Mr. Blanchard, this is Rita. He says, Well, Rita, do you do this for the hotel? No, sir, I'm a maid. Really? Yes, sir. We take half-hour blocks of time. We don't believe anyone should be awakened by a recording. I saw you on my list, Mr. Blanchard, and I hope I did a great job. Again, sir, you have a great day. And she hung up. And the call that would have been equally successful, most of us think, is that, Mr. Blanchard, it's 7 a.m., it's time to wake, have a great day, sir. But no. She went someplace else. By the power of her words, Ken said that he laid there for just a few more moments, throwing the sheets off of himself, standing and squaring his feet and his shoulders to the day. And at that moment, ladies and gentlemen, he said he felt inspired. Go and inspire people. Inspire them with your integrity. Inspire them with your hard work. Inspire them with your product knowledge, your joy for life, your zeal. Inspire them with just being around and being friendly with a listening ear. Go and inspire people, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't take much to do it. My meetings lasted 20 seconds in duration. During my meetings, I had to tell 10 men and give them a strategy, and after giving them the strategy, I had to inspire them that we could pull it off and make it work. All the while, 60 and 70,000 people on average would be talking during my meeting. I hated it. It's called a huddle. Before my father passed, I was sitting with him one day, and I said, Dad, every person that's walked in my huddle, I could put a bumper sticker on the foreheads of every one of them that said one of two things. It said either, please lead me or please inspire me. Since I've been 8 years of age to 30 years of age, Dad, everybody would receive one of those two bumper stickers. Ladies and gentlemen, people love to be led and people love to be inspired. I love to be led and I love to be inspired. Go and inspire people. They're looking for that from you. It's more than just your product and services. It's who you are. So how do we take this? Yes, you can clap, by all means. How do we take every speaker that's walked on the stage this week? How do we take the information, so much information, and how do we boil it down to make it actually do something so it's tangible, so that we're different when we leave this place than when we came into this place? How do we do that? Well, in March of 2008, just a couple months back, I spoke in Washington, D.C. before General Colin Powell. It's a tremendous honor. Tremendous man and a tremendous leader. And he made a statement that resonated in my heart. He said, great leaders are great simplifiers. They take information down to the basic level, and then they make decisions and commit on them. And so 2 things that I'm going to ask of you before I leave and throw out to you. Remember, you don't have to do this. It's all a choice. But here's what it comes down to make this work. It comes down to the decision. We are either men and women built for ourselves, or we're men and women who are built for others. I was a person built for myself for 23 years of my life. And at the age of 23, I flipped that coin over and went a different direction. And I've never looked back. Being built for yourself causes issues. I've seen it in so many companies that I work with. Greed happens. Businesses are run improperly. Teams don't aspire to greatness. The experience gets eroded. Families break up. Young men don't grow up and become policemen and firemen. They don't go to war and they don't fight for freedom. Children get hurt and people suffer, and I can go on and on. But men and women who are built for other people, they strap on an oxygen tank and they climb stairs in the World Trade Center to go save people. And they treat people with dignity and respect. And we talk about unconditional love, but how about unconditional respect? And if you're a football player like I was, you played every snap with all the strength and energy you've got, not for yourself, but all those guys that wore the same uniform and lined up next to you. And if you're a parent in this audience, you make sure that your children, to the best of your ability, get what they need, not necessarily what they want. And if you're a man with a ring upon your finger like I am as I stand before you, we treat the gal that we married better than any woman on the face of this earth in thought and in deed, if we're built for others. So, how do we wrap it up? How do we make it easier for people to do business with you? How do we make your business grow? How do we make it easier to inspire people and deliver quality service and model leadership and impart hope and optimism? And how about growing profits? How do we make it easier to do that? Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Go first. That's it. Listen again. Go first. I walk out this door in about an hour. I board a plane in 3. I'm going to be sitting next to some person on my right. Tom, go first. Extend a hand. Put a smile upon your face. Greet them. Ask them how their day's going. When I park my car tonight late in my house, when I park my car, I don't get out of my car as a businessman. I get out of my car as a husband. Why? Because my wife Molly's been doing the critical work, the tough work at home. And I get out as a husband who supports and loves. When you walk out of these doors, go first. What do you go first for? Have a vision that's bigger than yourself for your business. Have your 3 value sets written down so you know who you are, what you'll fight for, and what you'll compromise on. So that if I was to spend the morning with you and break bread with you at lunchtime, we could sit across from each other and communicate and say back to each other, you know what, you wear your 3 value sets so beautifully they come out in spades. Go first by living authentically and real. Why? Because character is power. Good guys and good companies do win. Clients are looking at you and they're asking 2 questions. You know what they are? Can I trust you and can I trust your company? Answer that in spades, you're the winner. The truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about us. It's not about me and it's not about you. It's the good people that we've been entrusted to lead. It's all about them. And we have something to give them. And that's the product and services of your great organizations. Let me finish by telling you what I think you do. In my great city of Seattle, Washington, 11 years ago, something unique happened. It happens every year, but 11 years ago, something unique happened. It's the Seattle Special Olympics at West Seattle Stadium. The stadium is packed. And at one point during this event, 9 kids line up at the 100-yard dash to run the race. These kids are all mentally or physically disabled. Now, I got to be honest with you. They're not going to run very fast. I mean, really, how can they? They've got handicaps and challenges. But I will tell you something. They're going to run with a relish to win. Why? Because mom and dad and brothers and sisters, they've packed the stadium. This place is electric. And they line up on the dash line, the gun goes off, and 9 kids take off down the track. They're running down the track, and one boy tumbles and falls. He begins to cry. The other 8 runners are running down the track, and they hear him cry, and so they slow. And then they stop. And then they look back. And then all 8 of them went back. It's the longest timed 100-yard dash in U.S. Olympic history for Special Olympics. Do you know that? The clock is still running. And they go back to this little boy, and one girl with Down syndrome, she bends down, she kisses the little boy on top of the head, and she picks him up, and they all kind of help dry his eyes and calm him down, and they get back in their lanes, and they lock their arms together. And these 9 kids walk down the track together, crossing the finish line, to a standing ovation and not too many dry eyes. And I love telling the story. Do you want to know why? It's because winning is great. But there's something greater than that. It's helping people to win. Ladies and gentlemen, your job is helping people to win. Life, ladies and gentlemen, it's about getting A's, isn't it? It's about knowing the answers on the test. Your job is creating winners. So every time someone leaves your presence, when that transaction takes place that I spoke about, and people walk away from you, they should be saying in their heads and their hearts, I just won because I communicated with you. Ladies and gentlemen, go first and lead the way. It has been my great honor, my great privilege, and my great pleasure to speak with you here today. I wish you nothing but great success as you go forward through the rest of 2008. And the only way that we get better is to continue to learn. Is that true? I'll see you in 2009 in Indianapolis. God bless you. Thank you. Have a great day. So long.